Hey, everybody. I am joined by the authors of the book, The Hate Next Door, The New Face of White Supremacy. We have Matt and Tawny Browning here. Welcome, and thank you for being my first interview of 2024.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. I like that.
I'm glad too. I'm glad too. You guys, like I was saying before we started, well, we were recording, but before the part that I'm going to cut off or whatever, I was saying that you guys have been on other shows that I enjoyed listening to. So it's good to be even more connected with my community via interview guests, and it's just good to talk to the two of you because this is a little outside of the scope of what I usually talk about, so it's going to be a bit challenging for me. So you guys will have to grade me afterward.
Well, shoot, I think you're going to be surprised. I think it kind of goes along with the same thing that you're talking about.
Well, that's what I was saying beforehand. I have a couple questions that are going to be, I think, a little different than the others ask. But for my audience who might not be familiar with you, Matt, how did you become interested in the subject matter? I understand there's a pretty terrifying origin story here, actually.
The subject matter of hate. Yes, I was a police officer for 20 years. And during my time, I worked undercover in white supremacist groups. But the reason why I went to the white supremacy was because a skinhead tried to kill me one night, stuck a gun in my chest, and we ended up fighting over the gun. And luckily, when he stuck it in my chest, the barrel dislodged and he couldn't fire it. So we fought and he went to jail.
Not exactly handy with the steel, as they say.
Yeah. That's the one time that I had my gun, but I didn't use my gun, and he brought his gun I guess he wanted a gunfight, and luckily I was able to, wrestle and fight over the gun and won.
It made it really personal, and the scary part about that is that he didn't stay, he went to jail that night, but he didn't stay very long, and what was it, 2 weeks later?
2 weeks later, the guy I fought ended up shooting a cop in the back. So, there's a lot of different things and people we can blame and point fingers at for him even being out. But, that was my first run-in with white supremacy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of police in the carceral state, but I feel like you put a gun in anybody's chest, you shouldn't be out of jail in 2 weeks. I don't care. I don't care who that other person is.
Yeah, you shouldn't. He should have been in for a long time, unfortunately.
I'm not a lawyer or a legal expert, but that seems like attempted murder to me.
It would be attempted murder of a police officer, and he should have been in for a while. But if we go back and research it, the reason why was the county didn't have the money to prosecute it.
Oh my God.
I mean, even with cops. So it made it really personal, and it made it, I'll do something about this too. So
yeah, you come after me. Guess what? You just opened up the door for me to research everything about you and the organizations you're with, and I'm coming after you. And since that time, we've been blessed or lucky. We put 19 skinheads in prison for murder, or attempted murder. So you know what? That one incident that night up on that dark road was the start of something good.
Yeah, I do think so. We're fairly critical of law enforcement around here, but infiltrating extremist groups that have violent intent is one of the things we think that law enforcement should be doing, because that is especially like what you were doing is prevention. I mean, I know you said that you guys ended up busting people who had committed murder, but I just think that your work very likely prevented many more murders. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the skins I locked up, we communicate back and forth now, even to this day. And he even said, you know what, Matt, if it wasn't for you, I don't know how many people we would have killed, how many people we would have hurt. And so I'm glad you disrupted and put us all away where we belong. And it's, I'm just going to have to tell you, I am 100% against corruption in law enforcement. If you're a dirty cop, you need to go to jail. That's how I stand. I have been nothing but I don't even know how to say it. I'm against corruption, but I am for law enforcement. I am for the work that we do, and I am for good cops.
Yeah, well, that's maybe another day we can we could have a debate about that, but that's not what we're here for today. And I think that the work that you did and disrupting violent groups is a very valid thing, and I think law enforcement should be actually engaging in more of that. With everything going on.
I think we should be working to stop it. And,
Right.
and prevention is key.
Proactive.
Yeah, an ounce of prevention, pound a cure, all that.
Oh,
So,
wow.
previous to this, had you done any other kinds of undercover work?
No. Anybody can buy dope. I didn't want to buy drugs. I didn't want to do any of that stuff. And how I kind of got thrown into this because the guy tried to kill me. And, that opened up the door to 13 plus years working undercover in various white supremacist groups, not just in Arizona, but throughout the United States and around the world.
That's good work. That's good work. Tawni, how did you become involved?
I was kind of involved anyway because he would come home and, it was almost like he was detoxing sometimes when he'd come home because hate really does change the neural pathways in your brain. And I didn't know that. I was just a kid trying to make sure I had the man that I married, that he stayed with us. But I was kind of involved like that. But one morning, it was actually Christmas, the day after Christmas, our 4-H lamb, my kid's 4-H lamb was found on the back porch, slaughtered. And so that was also a really dramatic way that kind of got me really into, knew that I needed to get into in the minds and the hearts of these men and then women as well to see what the enemy really was.
So the lamb, that was sending a message or an attempt to send a message. You had been somebody who had been prosecuted or something in their group had been disrupted, knew who you guys were and did that.
And I didn't know where it came from. I didn't really, I just knew that we needed to do something. And that little protective mama bear came out in me, and that was enough.
That was during the time when we had people show up at the house, wanting to confront me. And once you need to understand, you can mess with me when I'm at work. It's no holds bar. You do what you want to do. But when I'm at home, it's not the same. And luckily, Tawni wants to protect her kids, wants to protect her family, and that's what she did.
Very, very good. Very good. So what was the nature of your first undercover operation in this field?
Oh, in the white supremacy field?
Yeah.
It was a simple breakfast at Denny's with the head of the Arizona National Alliance and 3 of his buddies. It was getting into this. The National Alliance was the first group I became a part of. And from that point, then broke into all different things: the Klan, Aryan Nations, World Church the Creator. You learn about the War Skins, the Volksfront, the Vinlanders, Hammer Skins. I mean, the list is endless of the people that we began to associate just because I had breakfast with the National Alliance.
Were you scared the first time you went to meet with some of these folks?
No, I'm nervous. Yeah, maybe a little bit nervous. But the thing about hate is the people who hate, they can sense that fear. And when they sense the fear, that's they're going to really target on that. So I was lucky. I had 2 guys on my cover team that were a couple booths away from me. We sat and we talked for a while, and I developed my backstory from that conversation. And once that at first, it's like when you talk to a guest on your show, it's that first initial contact. It's like, okay, then we relax and everything's good.
That's actually a pretty good analogy there. Especially,
you feel that adrenaline, you feel it, but then you say, "Oh, Matt's all right." Or my name wasn't Matt, my name was Patrick or Packy. Patrick's an all right guy, and then everything just started going from there.
Tawni, how did you feel knowing that this was going to happen?
Matt's always been kind of our protector. And so I really wasn't worried about it. I really didn't know a lot of what he was doing. I knew that he did a lot of crazy stuff at work. And it just started surprising me how quickly they embraced him, though, and that every meeting that he went to was at Denny's. So those were the kind of the things that stood out to me was are these guys idiots? I mean, they're giving you all of these leadership roles, and why are we always meeting at Denny's?
Yeah. I think the Denny's thing, it might just be that it's everywhere. And so if somebody was trying to investigate, maybe they'd be like, well, it was at a Denny's. I mean, somebody might forget which Denny's it was. Not you. That's your job, is to document what Denny's it's at. But somebody else who might have.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Denny's or like Denny's is involved in any of this. It's just that it was surprising how every skinhead crew, it seemed like, wanted to meet at Denny's.
I'm going to actually start a conspiracy theory about this, that the Denny's is involved.
Well, I think there was 4 of them throughout the valley that we always met at. And it was.
And then when you were working across the country as well, it was just like meet at Denny's. And
I developed a hatred of the moons over my hammy.
Oh, that's like one of the only good things at Denny's.
I loved that. And then I ate it too much.
Well, I mean, if you want something good there, your options can be limited depending on which Denny's you're going to.
Exactly.
So once you got in, so people have this vision of what a white supremacist is. And I think one of the primary things is that it's a man. Were these groups predominantly men?
Oh man, it was a mixture. You can't have a group without the girls coming along too. And the girls seemed to be more violent than the men. One of our homicides we worked, a fight was started by the females, and then that hyped up the skins, the guys, and then they went and killed another person. And it was just, it's the women is a lot of the motivation, but also the women were some of my best sources. So it was good that they're chauvinists, and they have this thing, but they still want their women there with them. And they're a bunch of babies, they need shoulders to cry on, and they need people to talk to away from their buddy across from them. And so, there's a lot of girls there, but they call them birds. They're skin birds. And there'd be a mom bird, and all her little birds were with her. And then they'd hook up with the skins, and they would go from there.
How were the women generally treated in these organizations?
I've been told I'm not allowed to say it anymore, so I'm not going to say what it is. But they were treated. They were treated the way that they wanted to be treated, or the way that they thought that they should be treated. If you some of the girls were. I mean, they're stand-up girls. They just were good people sucked into an organization that they had no idea that they're being part of. But then there are the other girls that had the swastika tattoos. Then they had the hatred just like the guys did. And they would go on hunting trips with the guys and jump out and beat minorities.
I got to tell you, some of the guys that I was involved with and met, they would tell me about times that they would date just what they called outside girls. And the girls had no idea what they were getting into until that shirt came off and the tattoos were seen, the big swastikas and the warbirds and stuff. I mean, until that shirt came off, they didn't even know what they were getting involved with.
Well, there are, on a first date, there are things you do hold back. And I suppose if you're a Nazi, that might be one of the first ones, one of the things you hold back on your first date. That's a third date conversation.
Yeah. Love of Hitler should probably be held off on.
Yeah. Yeah. You wait until you think they're sprung, right? And this may sound like a dumb question. Did you run into any queer people in these movements?
Yes. It's not a dumb question at all, because when you talk about the other side, you have your sharpies, as we call them, which is your skinheads against racial prejudice. So within the sharps, you'll have whites, blacks, Mexicans, Jews, gay, straight, whatever it is, they can all come together. They look exactly like a skinhead. They dress head to toe like a skin. They'll go to the same shows as the skins go to. And I tell you, I had some of these sharpies working for me at one time, and they are some violent people. And they're just as bad as the skins are.
I'm from the Bay Area, and the history of the punk scene in Berkeley is full of confrontation between the sharps and the skins. And,
up there, I mean, you had Bash up there, and those guys were huge.
Yeah, and, I mean, I know some guys who have seen some things.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So because I mean I'm into punk rock and stuff, and so the way it's told from the sharp side is that they ran the skins out of the Berkeley punk scene, and I'm sure the history is far more complicated than that, and I haven't really done that much research on it. So.
I think if you talk to any sharp, they ran the skins out of every scene.
Yeah.
because it's just that's the way the Sharpies are, man. I mean, the Sharpies are some violent people, and I don't doubt that they did it. They're just nuts.
Oh, and I mean, in Berkeley, the skins were probably outnumbered a great deal by the sharps, and just regular people at punk shows. If some shit cracked off, they would certainly figure out. They might figure out who was who, and the punk rock scene does not like white supremacists. Actually,
oh no, they hate them. A lot of the shows that I've been to, they'll stop until the skins leave. They won't play anymore.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a better response than violence. But I mean, I also understand maybe the impulse, especially when people are young. Well, this was all young people. So, and they felt like their space was being invaded.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that. That's a lot of what I did, was go to a lot of those shows. And Matt loves punk as well. And so I saw a lot of that as well.
Ooh, maybe I'll send you guys some music by my friend's band after.
Yes, do.
Dude, I can't get enough of old school punk. I can't get it out of my system.
Yeah. My friend's band is they're a punk band, but the guy was like into theater, and so there's a little bit of Meatloaf in their punk rock, and so it's very cool, very cool. I'm wondering how in undercover work, a lot of times you're probably walking a bit of a razor's edge. How did you get involved and not end up hurting people or breaking, committing felonies essentially?
So that's a great question, because a lot of people think that once you go into undercover work, you have a free game to do whatever you want. And you don't, you cannot have a crime committed in your presence. If you do, you got to act on it. And so what I would do is I would try to divert it. If they're talking about it, I try to change it or say, yeah, let's talk about that later on or something like that. Because if I gather the intel that, skin A, B, and C are looking to do an armed robbery, then if I get that overt movement to commit an armed robbery, that's good enough. Let's arrest them. If we have skins driving around, doing a hunting trip, and we know they have weapons and they're looking, as soon as they pull up on that one minority to get ready to jump out, then we got them. And so that's what we did. We just would hit them before they would actually do the assault or something else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that makes sense, just because you're, the TV shows and movies portray this in a very, very different way. And, if you start committing crimes or being a party to committing crimes, now you're just a criminal.
Yeah. Now you have, and to be able to get that, I mean, you got to go, judges have to sign off on everything that you're doing. You have to have special permission from certain people. And it's like, I wanted to stop the crimes from happening. I didn't want to participate or be there to watch. I wanted to stop it from happening.
Well, and there were so many times. I mean, there was one night that it was just really close to our anniversary that I'll let you tell that.
Yeah, I did. I got a call one night. They wanted to hang out at a pool hall. And I said, I didn't want to, because it was our anniversary. Tawni and I wanted to go out, celebrate our anniversary. And so we go out, meet some friends at a restaurant. And sure enough, my phone goes off. And it was another agency calling me and saying, your friends just killed a guy. And I would have been there. And so I leave Tawni at the restaurant and I go and end up working this homicide for the next, 12, 13 hours.
And I mean, he really wanted to spend time with me. It was about love that night, and hate across the valley was happening. And from that, I mean, he had nightmares. This is why I don't know if other people know the other side of this, because he decided to stay with me. He knows he could have stopped that, at least in his heart. He thinks that. And so it caused nightmares and problems mentally, psychologically, which was nothing. I mean, he can't hold these guys' hands 24/7, but he knew that because of past experiences that he could have talked him down, and that may not have happened that night.
Yeah, you can't be everywhere. And, it was your anniversary. You're supposed to go to dinner, and it does. You were talking about love versus hate. It seems like in this case, hate kind of won, and that kind of sucks, because it's like the one night that some couples, I know you guys have kids, and sometimes the anniversary is like the one night where the kids aren't there. You're at a nice restaurant. Might not even be a nice place. It might just be a place that you have sentimental attachment to, or whatever it is. And then in this case, these motherfuckers like
exactly
kind of put a monkey wrench in that. That really sucks.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, it was just the start of many. I mean, Christmas Eve, it happened again on Christmas Eve. They killed another guy, and so, but that's why we made it important that our time together. Tawny would come with me to a show or a gig, and then she'd say, "Well, now that we've done your stuff, can we go do something I want to do?" And that's how we try to balance it out. And I'm here to tell you, I'm lucky because I had Tawny that would help me balance the stuff out. There's a lot of undercovers, a lot of cops that don't have that, and that's where the problems start.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's tough. Like I said, it's not like the movies. It's not like the movies. It's not.
No.
It's some guys. Apparently, when it is like the movies, those guys go down with the ship. I think because they end up, if it's dope, they end up doing the dope. If it's any number of things, they end up just doing it because it's like you were saying, this stuff. It doesn't matter kind of what kind of group it is. Like Tawny was saying, it's gonna in some ways kind of rewire your brain and make some people kind of change what they think is acceptable and what they think is normal.
Yeah, there's only 2 movies out there that are realistically close to what it's like, and it's you got it. The brain getting rewired is jacked up. I mean, when I found myself starting to listen to freaking Bound for Glory and Dropkick more than I should have, or not Dropkick, but Bound for Glory and Screwdriver, I aggravated as saw all the different hate bands that were out there. It's like, whoa, time to pull back the reins a little bit and put on Social D or something else if I wanted that hype.
Yeah. It's, good that you're self-reflective in that way. The one I've heard of those is Screwdriver because they're like kind of well known, and I don't want to say they're good at marketing. Their logo looks pretty cool, and they're pretty good at marketing. And I think they hit the internet pretty early and pretty hard in their journey too. Like a lot of white supremacists hit the internet. They got the jump on everybody on the internet. Actually,
their music sucks. I mean, let's say it for what it is. Screwdriver, they're musically they suck. I know a lot of guys that worked for Screwdriver and were security and accountants for Screwdriver, and but yeah, they were the first. But they hopped on the internet, they got the stuff out, and that's
magazines,
media, and that's what's going on now. I mean, that's the resurgence of all this stuff is all because of online media or all these stupid online stuff. And it's just it's sad and it's unfortunate, to stay up on what's going on. You got to dive into all these underground stuff, and it's kind of messes with you.
Yeah, and when it was our personal time, and he had some of those that music playing, I was like, okay, we really do have to have a balance here, and I do need this man that I married to be the man that I married.
Well, yeah. Sounds like you did a bang up job there, Tawny, of putting the brakes on when it was time. So,
well, I just knew what I wanted in my life and what I didn't, and what I wanted for the kids, and some of that stuff that was starting to happen, and some of the mentality that was being talked about, and which I'm grateful it was, because then I was at least in his head to know what was going on. It's not okay. It's not okay in a family. It's not okay in our communities. It's just not okay.
And Tawny, you're right. Tawny was good because something happened at work, and I called her up, and she goes, "You're done. You're done." And from that day on, I didn't go back.
Well, that was 20 years in, and I knew. I never thought that I would say something like that, but I knew with what he was saying that we were done.
Yeah. Well, after 20 years, you've done your time. You know what I'm saying? And now it seems like the next logical step is what y'all are doing now, is sharing your experiences and trying to inform people about what happened, and for lack of a better way to talk about, trying to get the normies to sort of understand that this is out there, and that it's like it's the hate next door, that you don't know how many houses away from you this might exist, no matter where you live, and no matter like what you think about your neighbors in your neighborhood and your homeowners association or whatever. So it's the logical next step, because 20 years is a long time to do that.
It was really like shocking to me that some of these guys were like teachers, and some were car salesmen,
doctors, accountants,
and there was a TSA agent as well. Mm-hmm. It just was like, what? I just don't even. I mean, how? And so that was one reason we wanted to write the book, is to say, look, keep your eyes open, know what you're looking for. Because if we didn't know what we were looking for, until we did know, like when we wrote the book, our agent said, look, you can't say that all these things started happening all at once, but it was like, but they did. Once our eyes were open to it, we saw it all around us.
Well, it's like anything else. You don't know about it until you do, and then if you dive into it, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see it everywhere. And there might be some ways in which, when we dive into something like this, we oversample for it. I'm not quite sure the right way to say this, where we might see it some places where it isn't, but it doesn't seem like that's the two of you.
I was going to say, that's not what happened. It was there, and it was concrete there, because I'm all about love. I'm all about Disneyland. I'm all about, the good stuff in life. And it was there, and it was ugly. And I didn't want it affecting people the way that I was seeing what Matt was seeing on the street.
Yeah. The problem when I got out, when I retired, we didn't get out. We kept doing our thing. We kept doing some undercover stuff. I was contacted by different militia groups that wanted me to go down to the border. And even knowing, if I told them I was a cop, a retired cop, they kind of pursued me even harder to go down there with them. And so it's the hate is on every different scale. And they're not as dumb as people think they are. They're not a bunch of knuckle dragging thugs and things like that. These are some smart, very intelligent people who are in the movement. And those are the ones we have to be aware of and concerned about. And hopefully by people reading The Hate Next Door, they can see that through our experience, you don't have to live this, because we give solutions, we give identifiers, we give stories and experiences, but all that stuff can be said. But you know what? This is how we can combat it. We just didn't want this to be a book about some cool stories. We wanted solutions, and actually we wanted to do what we're doing here and talk about it, and so people could understand.
And so that they would talk about it and maybe figure out how they can combat it in their own lives and communities. Because when Matt started, he was like a brave young lion, and he said, I'm going to eradicate hate. And it's just, now that he's wiser, he knows it's going to take all of us on all of our own levels.
And, it's more of a harm reduction model than it is an eradication model, because you can't eradicate this stuff, I don't think. I think people are hardwired is a weird way to talk about it, but people like their in group and don't like their out group, and that's just how most people are. I try to be less and less like that every day, but that software is running inside of me just like everybody else, and so it's just a matter of maybe making your in group as large as possible, so that
it's a good way to put it.
I like that.
So, did you ever get made, Matt?
Yes,
you did.
Yeah. What happened was I was asked to go and talk to a closed door session at our Senate in Arizona about how hate is fueling the border issue in Arizona. And as I go there, well, it wasn't closed door. I mean, every media outlet showed up, and next thing you know, right as I'm about to begin my presentation, walking through the door was the same knuckleheads I met at Denny's years before. And so from that time on, in overnight, I went my whole career without getting a single complaint, and wake up the next morning, I got 17 complaints waiting for me with our internal affairs. I have death threats. I have all kinds of things. And so
media attention like we had never seen.
Yeah. And so that was the end. I thought that was the end of my undercover work, but you know what? I kept going and doing things, and I just went from your street level skins. I just bounced it into your militias and your other organizations, your national and international groups that, try to bring awareness and teaching police and teaching communities of what to do.
Cool. So here's where it's going to get weird. Okay. What role did conspiracy theories play in the groups that you infiltrated?
No, QAnon. I mean, even going back to I think you started in the late 90s, even going back then. Well, I mean, you can go back to I mean, before that, you go back to the Order with Robert Matthews. You can go back to Ruby Ridge and Waco and all these other things. Those are full of conspiracy theories that these guys were preaching and teaching. And I think what's going on with the conspiracy theories is that people are looking. people who join these organizations are looking for something that's different. And if you put out a little piece of a conspiracy, people are going to latch onto it, and then they're going to go down that rabbit hole. And once you go down that rabbit hole, you start associating with the people who have that same philosophy. And it's like what you said about your in-group and your out-group. Well, now their in-group is being full of other conspiracy theorists. And I mean, what's the biggest conspiracy I think right now within the white supremacy movement is that, the Jews are here to take over the world. The Jews are running in media. The Jews are the Jews, the Jews. Everything is about the Jews. But you know what? Every Jew I've met, and I've met quite a few, I look at me and go, that's such a crock of crap. I want to live my life. I want to do this. But from before Christ, the Jews were being persecuted by other nationalities, other governments, other countries. And so I think that right now is a huge conspiracy theory within the movement. You have, if you go into and I know I'm rambling on a little bit here, but if you go into the sovereign citizen movement, the whole straw man, or the money being, the IRS creates an account for you when you're born that you can go and claim at any time. Every conspiracy theory these people spout is somehow they want it to better themselves. Not anybody else. It's about them. And so they will come up with something and then they'll act on it. And I mean, there's people dying over conspiracy theories.
Yeah. The one thing you had mentioned, the in-group, out-group thing, it's that the in-group knows the secret, right? And the normies don't. So we've got this special information. It could be anything from chemtrails to absurd things like flat earth. Any conspiracy theory, we have this information and other people don't have it. So it gives people an answer sometimes to complicated questions about the world, but it also lets people feel like they're better than other people because they have the answer.
The best way to put a conspiracy theory is the same as a religion. It's I'm Catholic, I'm better than you because you're a Baptist, or I have this truth from my church which you don't preach at your church, and that's how I think if you put religion in anything, you've just turbocharged the violence. And if you add a conspiracy theory into anything, you've also turbocharged the violence.
And I mean, that's different than, people's local church might be doing good work and not doing any of that stuff.
Exactly.
But it just depends. It depends. Because what I say a lot of times about religion is if I meet a religious person and I find out they go to church every Sunday, I think I'm going to like that person. Yeah. Right. Because they're like involved with their community. And like around here, there aren't, those big tent revival, fire and brimstone churches. And then, and if somebody doesn't, then I'm, my skeptical eye opens a little bit because it becomes more of a personal identity than about a community. And sometimes I'm just oversampled for that stuff. And sometimes I'm just totally wrong. And they're just like, I just don't feel like going to church. It's on Sunday. I'm not going.
Yeah, there's a good football game on.
Yeah, that's fine. So we also talk about a lot about Scientology, but I don't like the word cult so much. I like to refer to them as control and demand groups. And what you've described and what you're describing here, these operate like control and demand groups. And if you could talk a little bit about that.
I think the best person to talk about that is Tawni, because Tawni has been involved with a show called Escaping Polygamy and now The Secrets of Polygamy. And Tawni has talked to more of these people that are, I'll use your words, that are part of these control and demand groups like the FLDS or the Kingstons, the AUB, whatever polygamous group out there. And so Tawni's better to speak on that.
Well, it was shocking to me how much the white supremacists, the white nationalist movement actually kind of would merge and become very much the same kind of teachings that we were hearing among the polygamous groups. Like in the Kingston group, they're taught from the pulpit, Hitler had the right idea. He just didn't do it with the priesthood, or basically that means with God. So, FLDS, we all know about Warren Jeffs, or most of us have heard about him and his very radical ways of thinking about race. And it was just surprising how extremist groups actually, they start thinking the same. They start merging together. It's almost like evil follows evil, dark follows dark, that kind of thing.
And they're all looking for a leader. As soon as you have one person stand up and start teaching something that they can grab onto because they're desperately looking for something. Whether you go to Jonestown or any of these other huge cult things, Charles Manson. I mean, he was a religious guy. He taught what, and they wanted to hear what he was saying. It's all everybody's looking for a leader, and within the white supremacy movement, as soon as we have a leader, I guarantee this: as soon as we have somebody that stands up and is willing to go against law enforcement, federal government, and civil, companies that are out there fighting hate, like the ADL or SPLC or anybody else, then we're going to have a problem because everybody's going to flock to that person because now we have a spokesman, and that's how. When it's these cults or these high demand religions or secretive societies, they all have that one thing in common, and that's a very vocal leader.
Right.
And I got to tell you, I'm not always so convinced that the very vocal leader believes his BS either. I really don't know that they believe it, but they like the control, the money, that kind of stuff. That's what I always ask. Do you really believe this?
Well, there's a concept in like online influencer spheres called audience capture. And people talk about it like it's new, but like what you just said, Tawni, where the leader starts to turn up the volume on the rhetoric, and they get a more intense response from the people involved in the community that they're a part of. Well, they're going to keep doing that because that's the intense response. Even if it's not money, maybe it's all an ego trip for them or whatever. And so, people have talked about, how YouTube stars or whatever get captured by their audience. And I had somebody say, oh, this is a new phenomenon. I said, no, it's not. I'm like, Jim Jones got captured by his audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Look at Richard Spencer. What happened to Richard Spencer after Charlottesville? He went away He went away. He was making so much money and he was doing so much for the far right movement, the white nationalist movement. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, I can get in trouble for this. I'm gone. And once he stepped away, now that's when you have the bidding war of people who's going to step in to take his place. And religion's no different. Cults are no different. High demand religions are no different. They're all looking for somebody that is willing to stand up and take the heat when it comes. Yeah.
And I like you had said on the Did Nothing Wrong podcast, you were saying that there doesn't seem to be somebody right now. There's a lot of people making pretend. Like you had mentioned, little Nicky Fuentes. We always call him little Nicky Fuentes because because his rhetoric, he would be very upset to be called little Nicky Fuentes, I think. And he's not the guy. There just isn't that. And outside of him, like Tucker Carlson ain't the guy. He's establishment. He's just playing a game. And so I think you're right. I don't think there is somebody, or if there is, they haven't really gained any traction at this point.
There's nobody willing to pick up a gun and go against the government like David Koresh or Robert Matthews or Richard Butler. All these big names from the 80s and 90s. There's nobody. When Tawni was so instrumental in shutting down one of the world's largest, most violent skinhead crews, and once we got to the leader of that crew, he's like, shoot, I'm out. I don't want the feds coming after me. I don't need this.
He'd had enough of that.
He'd had enough. He wanted to raise his family and he wanted to work and build his business. But now, until somebody stands up, and I'll tell you, once that happens, I think we're going to be in a world of hurt.
There's just so much going on under the surface. There are lots of people that are vying, just nobody quite strong enough to do it. But that's why when they hear certain things and words in our politics, they're like, oh, well, maybe that's our leader.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. That's a good point. As a lot of times it's crazy because it used to be kind of dog whistly, I don't think it's just because I know more about this than I used to. I think people are more comfortable being open with like known rhetoric that caters to these groups or that emboldens these groups.
We wrote an op-ed, Matt wrote an op-ed for the USA Today that was published in last month. And the kind of things that we were seeing online in response to that op-ed were what I had only seen on a white nationalist website before. I was seeing the same stuff on Facebook and Instagram that I had only seen on a alt type social media site before. And I thought, wow, we really have gone mainstream.
I'm just like kind of shooting from the hip here, but is there a way in which maybe the internet allowing everyone to go out there and just kind of pop off and maybe go viral will make it harder for there to become a big leader in this movement?
Interesting.
I think the leader's going to come from a subgroup. I don't think I don't think the leaders even come out yet. Like little Nicky Fuentes. I mean, he's buddies with Trump, and Nick's going to get his, and it's when, I don't know, how, I don't know, but he's going to outgrow it, and people are going to go somewhere else. The money's going to leave, and I think that's his driving thing right now is the money, and the fame and the glory that comes with being a white nationalist, I guess. But I think it's got to be somebody who comes from almost like that dark malicious scene, who has maybe I'm not a profiler. I wish I was, but I think if you're asking me, I think it's got to be somebody that has a backbone, that has seen violence, who has been through violence, who knows how to handle himself in violent situations. So whether it's a vet, a cop, it's somebody, I don't know, but that's what we're going to be running into.
If you were to ask me who it would be, I would have guessed it would be some suit and tie motherfucker.
Yeah, those guys are almost like a dime a dozen.
Huh.
And because I'm not trying to tell you, no, you're wrong. That's
okay. That's okay. It's just like
to dismiss it. I definitely think that will be part of it, because you still have to have a face man, and you still have to have something. If you look at groups like the Oath Keepers, what made the Oath Keepers what the Oath Keepers were? Was it Stuart Rhodes? Who was Stuart Rhodes? It was the people that stood behind him that were ex-military, ex-law enforcement, active duty, Homeland Security, active duty federal governments, and active duty local cops. Those are the driving force behind these movements, because they're the ones with the training, they're the ones with the tactics, they're the ones that know how to use the weaponry, and they can teach it. And the guys like Stuart Rhodes or Nick Fuentes or Richard Spencer, any of these guys, it's like an 80s hair band, man. That's the front man. The true talent is the bassist or the guitarist.
Right. They're in it for the fame, to be a name and a face, to be. Exactly.
Because they have longer hair than the guy playing the drums, or he looks better in spandex than the other guy. And that's what a lot of this is. And within the white supremacy world, at least from my experience, you know what? The guys that scare me the most are the guys that have the knowledge of how to use the weaponry and know how to speak and how to talk and can motivate others. And they're the ones that'll be standing back, It's like every riot has 3 guys out there trying to get other guys to jump in the riot, promote the riot.
I mean, that's military structure too, right? The command and control aren't right at the front, because the command and control gets taken out. Now there's no communication. So right. It's just it's tactics. I mean, these are not new tactics, right? Like this is like,
I love that you keep saying that, because it's nothing's new.
Nothing's new. Everything just changes in like sometimes purely aesthetic ways based on what's going on in society. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing, even in music, we say you can't sing no song that ain't been sung before, right? Like it's the same idea. So you said that you, after you had stopped doing like on the ground undercover work, that you had consulted with law enforcement. What do law enforcement agencies get wrong about this issue? And is it different maybe for local, state, and federal authorities?
I think it's different for all of them. That's a great question. Mm-hmm. I think it's different for all of them because all of them have their different priorities. On the federal side of it, the priority is international terrorism. It's not domestic terrorism. It's not, I've worked cases where militias go down to the border in Arizona and they shoot illegal immigrants coming across the border. Shoot them, kill them, go down, steal their money or steal the drugs that they're hauling for the coyotes or the cartels, and use half of the money to fund what they're doing and give the other half the money to Border Patrol, make it look like they're doing something good for the country. So I think that everybody's priority is different, and is understanding that this crap is real. It's we're not making this stuff up. It's like why a lot of people think that white supremacy is like you say, or not like you said, but is a conspiracy theory. No, it's not. There are people out here that will kill you because of the color of your skin, because of the religion that you practice. And in order to help law enforcement, they need to be trained in what to look for. The signs, the tattoos, the stickers, the t-shirts, the music. Okay, we got this show coming to town, and I can tell you what type of people are going to be there because I spent 13 years going to these shows. And I can tell you what I was attracted. And I think that's the main thing but it's not just law enforcement. It's schools, it's churches, it's the government, it's our families. Understand if somebody comes home and they have a 14/88 drawn on their notebook, it's not their favorite Arizona Cardinal number that's on there. That's 14 Words by David Lane and 88's Heil Hitler. You need to address that stuff.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people don't see it.
I think a lot of people don't see it because they don't want to look, because it's like a very ugly place to look, right? Like, you know, my parents know broadly what I do, but we don't have a lot of conversations about like the kinds of topics that I cover. My mom
read the book and she said, "Oh my gosh, I have no idea."
Yeah. I mean, it's an ugly place, but I do think, unfortunately, you got to be, if you're in charge of any kind of organization, any kind of community group or whatever, you do have to be willing to look at the ugly parts of your community so that you can, you know, prevent them from getting a foothold in your organization. That's absolutely true. And I had mentioned law enforcement. Did you encounter other law enforcement with white supremacist views? Not former, but current.
The short answer to that is yes.
Yes. Well, I don't want any. We don't need any stories.
You can't help it because my. You know, I did all this work, went to all these meetings, went to all this stuff. I confronted it at grocery stores or being, you know, all these different things by these skinheads, and I could always talk my way out of it, and I could always, you know, be their best friend later on. I see them at a show and they want to fight me, and then next thing you know, Tawni's getting information from them at the bar. You know, there's all kinds of things we can do. But my biggest fear I had was going to a meeting, whether it's the Klan, the Alliance, creators, whatever it is, and seeing a guy across the room like, oh crap, he's Phoenix PD. And he's here on his day off. There is no cover team with him. He's here because he believes this. Or there's Glendale, Peoria, you know, whatever agency there was, the FBI, whatever. And that was always my biggest fear. And I joined an organization, and they were so excited that I joined this organization. And they said, you have to come to our meeting Saturday. We're having 2 police officers explain what they can do to you on a traffic stop and how you get out of things and what to tell them and what not to say. And I'm going, really? Who? And they told me the names, and I knew one of them because I worked with them. And the other guy was from a different agency.
And these are all documented. So it's like you can say, oh, but it's all now been documented that these guys were doing that. So it's just...
It's part of it.
Yeah, it's disheartening. And it was hard to live through some of that, like even talking about it, because it's like you just kind of go, how is this even happening?
Well, like anything else, it takes all kinds, I suppose. You know,
yeah, it's unfortunately when you get military, law enforcement at whatever branch or level who associate with these groups, now you're giving these groups the tactics that the government has paid to teach these people, whether it's building searches, close quarter combat, sniper training, entry, infantry, cannon, explosives, IEDs, whatever it is. You're passing that information on to a radical organization that uses it against us as police officers or military. And
right.
It pisses me off.
And I mean, you know, when somebody retires, it's not like you can take that stuff out of their head, right? You can take all kind of things from people, but you can't take what's in their head from them. So even if somebody's fired for, you know, a valid reason or whatever, well, they still got the training, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a guy fired out of the academy for his membership and associations with white supremacists and outlaw motorcycle gangs. And, you know, he came to my house, wanted to confront me about it. And, you know, he got my address from guys on the police department. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
So I got,
For all those, there's very few that actually are dirty. It's just for the ones that are, it's just
slap in the face.
Yeah, well, I mean, most the good thing about this is most people aren't white supremacists.
Exactly.
So you're going to find, unless you're in an explicitly white supremacist organization, you're going to just find a few. You're going to find them. You're going to find people that hold these views in tech work. You're going to find these people that are plumbers, contractors, like you said, teachers, counselors, the post office. You're going to find them. They're just everywhere. But thankfully, most people don't hold these views. But I do think that there's a large swath of people who are like ignorant to what's going on, and then there's another group who kind of know what's going on, but they're not willing to rock the boat at work or at their church or in their friend group, even if one of their friends is kind of popping off about some kind of shit,
Yeah. That's why you have the guys that go out on their own and do things. Yep.
So the one thing I wrote down while we were talking, the last question I think I'm going to ask is so we watched January 6th live on the stream. I knew something was going to crack off. Like I heard people talking about it. Like I have fake Facebook accounts that are doing some version of probably what you do online, or you get invited to these fake Facebook groups, or Telegram is a fucking cesspool. But on January 6th, one thing, they stole a door from the Capitol, and we're the only people who have noticed that, which was a little odd. I wonder what happened to the door, but I don't think you know. But the other thing we noticed was that a lot of the people there, and I don't think all the people there were necessarily white supremacists, but I think that the people there were under the misguided impression that the Capitol Police were on their side, that the Capitol Police wanted to prevent the transition of power from the former president to the current president. And just, I don't know if you have the answer, but do you have any ideas why they would have thought that the people tasked with defending the Capitol would have just been on their side?
Oh, wait, you mean like the conspiracy theories that the Capitol Police were against the government type thing?
Well, no, we saw people that's interesting too, actually. But I guess so. I guess we saw people telling the Capitol Police, "Oh, you're on the same side as we are. We back the blue." And
yeah, well, here's what you got to. Here's what it is, and it goes back to what we just talked about. Is that a lot of the people that were there, that were part of the main forming of all this stuff, were oath keepers. Oath keepers are, former law enforcement, former military, current law enforcement and military, and so as a cop, when if I go to a concert and there's a cop working security, I can show him my badge and he'll let me in for free, because hey, we're cops, that type of thing. And I think that's what they were expecting there also, is that, hey, brother, I'm here with you, brother. And I hate the word brother because, number one, I'm not your freaking brother. And number two, it's not the truth. I don't support you in what you're doing. I support you if you're back at the park yelling and screaming with everybody else, having your protests and doing what you think. But as soon as you start assaulting police officers, stealing from police officers, breaking windows at the Capitol, kicking doors in at the Capitol, you have now crossed the line that your badge that you carry every day means nothing to me. And it should mean nothing to you either, because you just violated every oath that you ever took. And I think when we watch the films, because you're right, I watch the films. I've watched a lot of film when it revolves around January 6th. Because I was looking for the Oath Keepers. I was looking for the Proud Boys. I was looking for the guys with the Totenkopf t-shirts or the tattoos of swastikas because they were there.
So that's interesting, because I was looking for the media influencers. I was like, where's Nikki Fuentes? Where's Baked Alaska? Where's Richard Spencer? And Richard Spencer wasn't there. But I was looking for...
Alaska was there. He was inside.
Yeah, we watched his live stream from inside. Yeah, But that's interesting that we were both looking for different factions of the same thing when we were watching the footage.
I was looking for the group serpentining up the steps and holding onto their backs and tapping and doing all this other stuff, because that's all tactics.
Right.
That's military or law enforcement. Which are you? And they had the zip tie cuffs and they had all this stupid stuff on that they shouldn't have been there, but they were there. They went there. They showed up in DC with that equipment, which tells you that it was planned in advance.
Yeah, and I think that maybe not so much the Capitol Police, but I think that in that case, federal law enforcement really dropped the ball, because if I knew that what we saw, I was somewhat shocked by what I saw, but it was by like individual things that I saw, not by I was like, I think I even said on our show the Sunday before, I'm like, these motherfuckers are going to storm the Capitol if they don't get what they want. And I may have said it like flippantly, but it's not like I didn't mean it. And if I had that inkling, I don't know why. I have no idea why federal law enforcement did not have that at the top of like their collective minds on that day. It's so crazy.
I can tell you, it's no different from Charlottesville. It's no different from anywhere else. Is that when you have somebody saying, if Matt Browning calls and says, guys, I'm hearing all this information and I'm telling, well, we'll just say the FBI, and I'm saying I have this info, and this info, they have to go back and confirm everything that I'm telling them through their own sources. And it takes too long. You can't do that. And so were the Capitol Police part of this? No, they weren't. They were there to protect. But when you're being stormed and your ass is getting beaten, it's like, geez, man, just go do your little tour and leave the building.
Well, you're going to want to save you don't, nobody goes to work and says, I want to die today.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what happened is these poor Capitol Police that were understaffed, undermanned, probably undertrained to handle this type of stuff. You know, the guards should have been there. Where, like you said, where were the federal agencies that should have been there, because they should have seen the same thing that you guys were seeing
and
with all the talk online.
Exactly. And you guys watched it. You saw what you saw. I just was horrified. And I can't believe that we're trying to pretend like that didn't happen. We all saw it.
Well, yeah, I mean, this was a violent attempt to prevent the peaceful transition of power. You know, say what you want about any particular politician. If they win the election, they won the election. There are remedies. A president can be impeached. They can be voted out next time. There are remedies, and we live in, it's a meme, but we live in a society. And in a society, sometimes you have to accept that things don't shake out the way that you want them to, like when it comes to the government. And unless it's something so extreme that you need to overthrow the government, and that's like, there have been very few instances in history where an overthrow of the government has been like done for legitimate reasons. You're just being a crybaby. You're just being a crybaby because you didn't get what you want.
And remember this is really important, that I think a lot of people, if we can understand this, then we can understand where we're headed. When it comes to politicians and elections, we have a base is already there, and that base last time elected Biden as the president. So what do you have to do to win this election? You got to go outside that base to a more extreme group and bring them in, because then you're adding to the votes. Your base has now gotten bigger because you're getting new voters coming in. And that's what's going on now. If you go back and listen to some of these guys, I mean, I'm not going to give names and stuff, but if you listen to what they're saying, I mean, they're not looking for me and Tawni to vote for him. They're looking for the extremes of the extreme to come out to the polls and cast a vote for them.
And me and you.
Yeah, and us. And whatever their base is, plus the extremes of the extremes. Not your Proud Boys, not your nationalists, but now they're looking for maybe some hardcore sovereigns or some hardcore freemen or constitutionalists who've never been to town since 1984. They're expecting them to come in masses and droves and vote for their party. And that's the scary part of where we're headed.
And the crazy thing is that if a political party was looking for more votes, they would want to tack toward moderates, because there's a lot more moderate people. I mean, I am, politically pretty far to the left, but like, as far as like disposition and like just on many issues around like how society is structured and how I want things to work, I'm pretty moderate. And it would behoove a political party to go after somebody who's more moderate, just because there's so goddamn many more of us who don't vote than extremists who don't vote. I mean, a lot of extremists don't vote, but there's a lot more normies, and I don't understand like why people wouldn't just go after the normies and try to appeal to the normies who aren't voting, because there's just so many people who don't vote. It boggles my mind.
Yeah, I mean, our political views don't really matter.
We're very much not political people. I mean, we much more than we've ever been, but we've always been pretty centrist and just, kind of leaned one way or the other on certain issues. But these aren't political issues. These are what are happening. This is what's happening.
The stuff you're talking about doesn't just lean one way or the other.
No, exactly. It is what it is. And Matt will tell when he goes into law enforcement and he teaches law enforcement, he's like, you're not going to like what I say, but these are facts and these are what have happened. These aren't just my opinions, and it's not political. This is what's happening.
Once you say the words bloodline or pure bloodline, I'm going there. You have just gone 3 steps outside of the norm of people that you're trying to get.
Right. At some point, you can't just call that politics anymore. I think politics is a method by which we don't kill each other. Right. It's the method by which we don't hurt each other when we disagree on how a society should be run. When you start talking that bloodline shit or just any kind of like, well, this group is out and needs to be eradicated or marginalized or exterminated, I don't think that's politics. I think that you're abandoning politics of a civilized society at that point.
And that is straight up with the very first where I talked to skinheads and said, teach me what you know. That is one of the first things that came up was the bloodline stuff. And it's just, we see that in polygamous groups, the bloodline. It's a very scary, scary territory when we start talking that.
If you go back in time 4 years and you start listening to the different things, it used to be, yes, I'm a nationalist, or we need to build the wall, or we need to keep out the rapists and the gangsters and the criminals. And that was the speech. Now we have to keep our bloodline pure. We have to do things like that. You know what? No.
What was the actual quote?
That's straight out of Mein Kampf. I mean, there's no way. Hitler said it first.
And I didn't know Hitler said it, but I can name at least 10 different skinheads that taught me that.
And not for nothing, this is a pretty diverse country. I don't know how you would even accomplish their version of purifying the bloodline. I live in the suburbs, and I just see people that are different than me everywhere. So I don't even the only logical conclusion there is, violence, some kind of, removing somebody from their country where they live and sending them somewhere else is violent. You know what I'm saying? And so to purify a society, you can't do that without violence.
No.
And this is a great nation, and we can't even have a lot of these conversations within our own families. So that's why one reason we wanted to write the book is so that we could talk. We could get families to talk, teachers to talk, coaches to talk, that we can have these conversations. So maybe we can be enlightened as a country and as a people. This is a great nation with really smart people. We don't need to be like this.
We need to start somewhere. We need to start over. So who do we start with? Junior high school, first 2 years of college, whatever it is. We need to, I just don't get it. How come in high school, all different races and nationalities can go to class together and play football together and play basketball together and win championships. But as soon as they step foot out of that high school and go to college, it's over. It doesn't make sense.
And I think that, it would be a tough sell for a high school to teach a class about this stuff. Mm-hmm. Just for fear of basically pissing off the parents who don't want their kids learning about the work that you do, and in some ways the work that I do, but you guys are more narrowly focused on white supremacy. But I do think it would be a bang up class if it was taught the right way. It would be so good for the students. The students might be able to talk to their parents a little bit about what's going on in class. I just don't know.
We've had some. Not to interrupt you, but he's given several seminars. I don't know, he's gone and talked to auditorium full of high school students, and it's been a really, really well received and tell them about our local high school coach.
Yeah, I mean, we love football in our house, and so one of our youngest son. He played football at the local high school. The first year, his freshman year, they were 1-9. They were horrible. But they said, we're going to win a state championship our senior year. Come senior year, the coach got everybody together. There was Hispanics, there was white, there was black, there was Jews, there was Catholics, there was every
and
a couple,
Russian
and some other, whatevers. But they came together in a classroom, and the coach said, you will sit down and you will learn everything you can about your teammate. Because when you step on that field, all this other stuff doesn't matter. You guys are brothers, and you are on this field, and you're teammates, and you will play to win. And sure enough, I mean, they won 11-1, won the state championship, and they did it because the coach sat them down and said, you are a team. And that's what we need. We need teams. We don't need the left and the right. I'm so tired of hearing somebody say, my friends from across the aisle. No, these are your fellow Americans that we need to sit down with and talk about what's going on. The line of the moderate people is going away real quick, too quick. And we need to get back to the middle ground so we can at least have a conversation.
What I love about the story he told is that it happened, he was able to bring socioeconomic and all kinds of diverse people together for a common goal, and they won. He won Coach of the Year last year, again this year. So if we can do it on our football teams, why can't we start doing this in our communities and in our nation? I don't think it's too simplistic to employ those.
I think some of it may be that we're isolated. I think that people don't go run and, to do a pickup basketball game, or it doesn't have to be sports, just like things like, it's kind of a weird example, but like Toastmasters, those things are dying. And that's where people would get together and learn how to give public speeches. And it's just all these institutions, all these community institutions are going away. And it's funny because people thought TV was going to do it, but TV now used to be a thing too. Everybody would watch the same shows, and they would chat about the same shows. Now there's so many options. People aren't watching the same shows. And so I think everybody's just getting fragmented. And so it just forms these little pockets on the internet. And I'm guilty of forming a little pocket on the internet myself. I just hope that I'm, telling people good things and giving people good tools to, analyze society and to figure out when people are trying to mislead them for their own ends. But it doesn't mean I'm not that I'm not doing it, and that it hasn't happened to me too.
That's
and so I think, community engagement, a lot of young people used to run off and join the Peace Corps before college. And, that's not a thing people do anymore because the college is so damn expensive. If they're going to take a gap year, they might have to go work and save money to do that. Or if you start late, then you feel like you're going to be a year behind on making money because you went off and, saw the world. If you have rich parents, I suppose you don't care, but most people don't have rich parents. So yeah. I think that just the sort of death of community is one of the problems. And it is, it's not just the internet, but it's certainly easy to get yourself into any kind of pocket on the internet.
And that's why we want community involvement. The churches need to step up. The community leaders need to step up. Let's come together. Let's do things as a community. And like the book's title, The Hate Next Door. We're doing a TV show for A&E called Secrets of Polygamy. Things that are kept in the secret, they want them to be secret because they're doing hurtful, harmful things. So let's stop hurting kids, number one. Let's start building ourselves up as a community, and let's start coming together so we know who our neighbors are. I mean, growing up, we would, we run the streets, but as soon as the street lights came on, you had to go in the house for dinner. It's just not like that anymore, and we need to have it like that.
Yeah.
We do need to look out for each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll say that, since I moved to the burbs, I lived in South San Jose before, and now I live in the East Bay, but it was the burbs. But when I lived in a denser area, I actually knew my neighbors. Mm-hmm. And it's just, but it's because everybody, you have to know your neighbor. They live in the unit above you. And if they want to have a dinner party, you want them to tell you. You really want them to invite you. Maybe they're a good cook, but also you want their phone number. So if they're being a little loud or whatever, you can be like, hey, I don't feel, I'm sick today, and it's just little stuff like that, and when you get out, at least for me, when I got out into the burbs, those things stopped being important, and it was really hard to connect with my community and the people around me, and it felt a little bit alienating. Where I'm at now, I'm actually making an active effort to do a little bit more of that. I'm friends with the lady that runs the New India Bazaar around the way, because I'm learning to cook some killer curry. But it's just little stuff, and I think that we're getting atomized, and I think that everything being sort of tailor made for individuals, be it, just through something like Netflix, even where now you don't have to flip through the channels and you might not find something you might not otherwise watch, or you're in a Facebook group. Maybe it talks about crime in your community and there's only one perspective on the crime in your community. Oftentimes a hyped up perspective about crime. And that nobody ever pops in to be like, well, here's the statistics, and you live in a pretty safe fucking neighborhood, actually.
Yeah, and that goes back to the conspiracy theories of the far right, of the white supremacists. The statistics that they have on all kinds of different things are so jacked up, but nobody will sit down with them and show them the truth about what's going on. And that's why we need to. I mean, it seems like nobody wants to sit down and talk to a guy with a swastika tattooed on his cheek.
And maybe they shouldn't.
Or a skinhead across his forehead. But those are the people who need to be talked to before the tattoo's put on. Those are the ones who you can see the change happening, but you won't see it unless, number one, you know what you're looking for, and number two, you care, and number three, you know what to do to maybe make this person make a different turn in their life.
And that's exactly the kind of person that Matt does seek out, and we've had success in helping them see a different way of thinking, and that there might be a better way.
Well, and I do think that a lot of these groups, be it something like Scientology or a white supremacist group, will prey on people who feel alienated, who feel anxious about their community, their society, not getting along with their family, maybe in the throes of substance abuse. These are the people, the people that are doing the recruiting aren't dummies, right? They're, there was there in the 2009 through 2012, there was this big movement online of sort of men's rights activists, and they were mad that they couldn't get dates, essentially, right? And it was, usually because, if you're mad at the world, maybe people don't want to date you. But the white supremacist movement noticed that was a lot of men and a lot of white men, and so they started showing up at those events and recruiting, because they're not stupid.
I mean, look at Proud.
They know where to go fishing, right?
It's basically a Proud Boy recruitment party is all that is.
Yeah.
The male chauvinists, women need to be in the kitchens and all this other stuff. Let's go out and drink beer and fight. And so, yeah, but that's the type of stuff that you could see, and you saw that, and you could, in your mind, you could formulate, okay, this is what's going on. And that's one of the reasons why we wrote the book, is we want everybody to be able to formulate in their minds, 88, I know what that is. Oh my gosh, there's a Sharpie, tattoo, or there's a, whatever the symbol is that they're looking at, and they can know, all right, you know what? Kid's 14, 15 years old. I'm going to talk to him.
Right.
Don't necessarily want my daughter to date him, but I'm going to go talk to him. Our daughter was at the gas station the other night getting gas in her car, and she called, Dad, what does this tattoo mean? And it's just awareness. It's knowing what's there, and then it's addressing what is there.
And once we're aware, I think we can have the conversations and maybe make some changes and a difference.
Right. Like if somebody was like, oh, I was born in 88, I'm like, well, then why doesn't your tattoo say 1988?
Yeah.
Right. If you want to do that. And the tattoo artist knows what they're doing when they put that on somebody too.
Well, and then I mean, that gets into a totally new thing, the sanctioned tattoo parlors and sanctioned tattoos and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
That, is a different topic, different show. But yeah, it's awareness, and that's what it boils down to for me and for my family, and especially for me and Tawni together, is now that we're aware, now that we're trying to make a difference.
Great. I've really enjoyed talking to you, but before we put a fork in this, let's hear about this new A&E show.
Saw you.
Well, we've started it. We were working on it all last year. It's called The Secrets of Polygamy. And it's part of A&E's Secrets of franchise. And they've done a really good job in putting us under that umbrella. And Matt actually is one of our lead investigators, or he is the lead investigator. And he goes and talks to different people to learn more about polygamy. And it's been really fascinating. Some we were able to put on air, and some of it, is happening, actual investigations that are happening right now because of some of this work. So it's very exciting.
The big thing about this that I want to say about the show is it airs every Monday night for 10 weeks. But it don't mess with kids. And that's what a lot of these organizations are doing. And this isn't a spoiler alert or anything else. Do not jack with kids. And that's what's going on, is that within these fundamentalist, cult, secretist societies, polygamous organizations, these poor girls are 12 years old and they're being forced to marry somebody who's in their 60s or 50s or 70s. And it's just sad and it's sick and wrong. And do what you want in your house. I don't care. You're consenting adults. Do whatever it is you want to do. But as soon as you bring a kid into it, you've crossed that line and you've committed a felony.
And it also, like, it splashes over on, like you were saying, consenting adults. So if you want to have multiple partners as a consenting adult, you go on with your bad self and you let your freak flag fly, and you maybe even advocate for the rights of the people who are doing what you're doing. But then a lot of times I think people who are in these kinds of relationships end up having to spend, an unreasonable amount of time explaining to people that, like, no, it's not like this. It's not like this. Well, we're 35, 32, and 33, and we live together. Like, you gotta stop painting us with this brush. And it just kind of sucks for people because, like you said, it's somebody's right if they want to have multiple partners. Having
the multiple partners is one thing, but having the multiple partners that they say is sanctioned by God and they're married and a prophet of God has told them to do this and bring kids into the world so they can build the kingdom.
It's the kids who suffer, and I've seen it over and over and over.
It's just horrible.
Even if intellectually I don't like it, I've seen that it's the kids that suffer in these kind of situations.
And, like we said before, this comes down to control and demand. These are control and demand groups. And it's one thing, again, if you're recruiting adults, I suppose, into a control and demand group and using persuasion to get them to join, that's bad enough, right? But now you have kids that don't have a choice. And that's far more terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, Matt and Tawni, this has been great. Thank you for being my first interview guests of the year. Hey. And if you guys ever need anything, I don't know what I have to offer, but if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to help you guys out. If you ever, I don't know if there's some skill set I have that you could benefit
Same
from.
With you. Yeah, same with you. Sure. Whatever we can help you with, please let us know.
Okay, great. This has been Matt and Tawni Browning. The book is The Hate Next Door. And make sure to check out the new A&E show.